Hi class, for tonight's video I wanted to take at least one problem from the review worksheet. The answer key is posted online at myplanbook.com, but also wanted to kind of at least work out one problem on the video. And I'm going to do number 7 from the worksheet, and I'm going to go kind of fast through this, but I want you to be able to just rewind or skip back in the video and make sure that you understand where I get each of my numbers and what the process is and how I got to where I am. And then if you have any additional questions or anything like that, we'll talk about it in class. Now, I also just want to throw this out there real quickly that one of you had requested, and it's not the first time it's been asked, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Unfortunately, I can't do live streaming where we can have situations where you can ask real-time questions and things like that as I work through the problems, because logistically it's just going to be too difficult to get everybody together at the same time. As far as what time I'm able to record these videos and post them is actually going to be different every night. So plus many of you have so many different things going on between dance practice or sport practice or other activities and what have you. So just logistically, live streaming isn't probably going to be in the cards. So with that, again, just rewind the video to make sure that if you miss something where I got my answer, that you can kind of go back and see, and then tomorrow we can ask questions if we need to. So again, this is problem number 7. Just kind of review what we have. We have two parallel lines. We have X and Y. And the problem did state, some of you had mentioned this up in problem 6, the reason why it was a difficult problem. Just make sure that you look for something like this, which says line X is parallel to line Y, which therefore, since that is defined, then we can now use our equivalent angles once we find which ones are congruent. So we have line X and line Y, which are parallel. They are intersected by transverse line C. And then our two intersections are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this problem is asking us to solve for X. And then angles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Sounds like a lot, but as we discussed in class, there's actually only 2 angles. And 4 of them are going to be one of them, and the other 4 are going to be the other angle. So let's talk about how we do that. And again, I want to stress the importance of taking your time during the setup phase and critically analyzing what it is that you're going to compare or evaluate. Setting up the problem right is half the battle. And once you get that, then the rest is just going to fall into place. So the first thing that we need to understand of all the relationships that we talked about yesterday's video, today in class, all of those relationships between any 2 angles, they are either going to be congruent or supplementary. Meaning, if I have vertical angles, as you heard me say in class, vertical angles are congruent. So if I was evaluating 5 versus 8, I would say they're congruent. So whatever the measure of angle 5 would be, I would also automatically have the measure of angle 8. And that goes for 1 and 4 as well, because as we know, 5 and 1 are corresponding angles, and 8 and 4 are corresponding angles as well. And as we know, corresponding angles are also congruent. So make sure you pay attention to the bottom half of the first side of that sheet. Make sure you check your answers versus the answer key. If the 2 angles that we're looking at, or the 2 that we're given in the problem, are supplementary, the way that we'll set up that problem is we'll just add the expressions of the 2 angles together and make that equal to 180, because as the definition of supplementary is that 2 angles that added together equal 180. So we would do that in order to solve for X. If the 2 angles that we were comparing to each other were congruent, we would put them on opposite sides of the equal sign, because they're both equal to each other. In this case, we're looking at angle 4 and angle 6. So we have angle 4 right here and angle 6 right here. So our relationship would be that they are, in respect to the transversal, they are both same side, and they are on the inside of the space created by the 2 parallel lines, so they are same side interior. Now what we know from that relationship is that these 2 angles then are going to be supplementary. So now that I know that, I can set up my equation to solve for x. So what I'm going to do is say that L4, angle 4 plus angle 6 has to equal 180 degrees. That's my definition of supplementary. So now I'm just going to substitute that expression for each of these, that expression for it, and this expression for angle 4. So I'm going to rewrite it as 3x minus 10 plus 7x plus 50 equals 180. Now again, as I mentioned, when we're combining like terms, you can use shapes or double underlines, for example. For my values that have the variable in it, I'm going to use a double underline. So I have 3x plus 7x. That's going to give me 10x. And then for my constants, maybe I'll use a wavy line, or I'll circle them. Whatever works for you to make sure that you're combining all of just the same type of term. So I have a negative 10 and a positive 50. That's going to give me a positive 40. So now I have 10x plus 40 equals 180. Now I'm going to use the two-step method to solve equations. We use inverse operations. So the first thing I want to do is isolate the variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. So if I have a constant, I'm going to do the inverse operation to get it to the other side. That 40 is going to cancel out. That's going to leave 10x is equal to 140. My second step then would be to find out what just the value of one of those variables are. So I'm going to use the inverse operation. So instead of multiplying by a coefficient, I'm going to divide by that coefficient. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10. So I hope this is still visible on the screen, but ultimately I get x equals 14. So the first part of my answer is that x equals 14. But that doesn't tell me yet what the angle measure is. The angle measure is I have to come back to my expressions and then substitute that 14 in for x. So I have 3 times 14 minus 10 for the value of angle 4. And for the value of angle 6, I'm going to take 7 times 14 and then add 50. Okay? So 14 times 3. You could do this in your head. If not, just use long division. 4 times 3 is 12. 2 is 1. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1. That's 42 minus 10. 32. So the measure of angle 4 is going to be 32 degrees. I'm just going to write that right here. And then, again, we're looking at angle 4, so I'm going to write 32 degrees right there. Okay? Now I'm going to do angle 6, so I have 7 times 14. That's 98 plus 50. That gives me an angle of 148. So angle 6 has a measure of 148 degrees. Okay, so now I could also move that up there. Okay, so now I solved that. Now I can quickly do a double check just to make sure that the numbers are driving. I can add 148 and 132. Add them together, I should get 180. And in fact, if we were to do that off to the side here, 8 plus 2 is 10, carry the 1. That does equal 180. So now all the heavy lifting is done. Now we can just go in and fill in the congruent angles and the supplementary angles. So we have angle 4. Vertical angles are congruent. So if angle 4 is 32 degrees, I know angle 1 is going to also be 32 degrees. Since angle 4 is 32 degrees, I'm going to do another rule, which is corresponding angles. So angle 4 and angle 8 have the same relative position at the other intersection. So angle 4 and angle 8 are also congruent because corresponding angles are congruent. So the value for angle 8 is also 32 degrees. And if angle 8 is 32 degrees, I would know then that angle 5 is also 32 degrees because as we talked about several times in class, vertical angles are also congruent. So now I have angle 5 is 32 degrees. Now, of course, as we mentioned, out of two intersections, there's going to be 8 angles. 4 of them are going to be one of the measures, and then the other 4 are going to be the other measures. So I can just go ahead and fill in the rest. I encourage you to take your time, double check this if you have a few minutes. Well, go ahead and make sure that you see the relationships of all of these angles and why they are in relation to angle 6 and angle 4, which are the two that we solved in the problem. So there you have it. We identified that these two angles of the expressions that we were given were supplementary because they're both same side interior, which means then they're going to be supplementary, which means I'm going to add them together, make that equal to 180. So I'm going to add that expression here, combine like terms, use this two-step to solve an equations method. That's how I solve for x. Once I have my value for x, I come back and I substitute it into the expressions. That gives me the actual angle measure that I'm looking for. Once I have the two angle measures, then I could just use the relationships that we've discussed in class as far as vertical angles, corresponding angles being congruent, etc. And again, you could use whatever combination of rules that you want. Maybe you're going to look at, vertical angles and then corresponding angles, whichever works out for you. Again, there's a couple paths that you can get to the same location. So that's it. Again, hope you found this video to be helpful. And if you have any questions, we'll take a few minutes before the quiz tomorrow and we'll get those answers. So thanks a lot. Hope you have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.